This is a fundamental loop structure in C++. The primary purpose of learning this concept is so that we can finally stop manually repeating ourselves in our code and instead let the computer handle all the heavy lifting of repetition. This is a task that the computer excels at, and it is achieved through a powerful feature found in C++ and in almost all programming languages in general. This essential feature is formally known as loops, or more specifically, iterative loops, which allow for the efficient execution of code blocks multiple times. Let's start this tutorial in a very simple and straightforward way so we can clearly understand and follow what we're talking about. Exactly. Imagine you are in a scenario where you need to print the word hello 5 times. In the standard C++ programming language, you would typically have to write out the code manually like this. In our specific case here today, in this video, you would have to print it 5 times by following this exact method shown right here. But just try to imagine that we actually want and truly need to print something out. Imagine writing this single word over and over, perhaps 1,000 times. Does it really make sense for a person to write it like this? 1,000 times? This is exactly where the computer comes in. Computers are incredibly efficient and reliable at repetition, and one of their core strengths and primary functions is to repeat complex operations and repetitive tasks with ease. Now, the for loop is a fundamental tool that allows us to write a block of code just once, and then we can tell the machine exactly how many times we want it to repeat that same code. This saves us from writing the same instructions over and over again manually. To help make these concepts much clearer and more intuitive for you to understand, let's take a look at a simple example together. A for loop. This configuration includes 3 mandatory and essential parts located inside the parentheses to ensure it works properly. Now we will focus on the first part, which is known as the first step is initialization, which is the very starting point, the beginning of the loop, where we define the initial value of the variable inside the loop. In the C++ programming language, we begin by writing the keyword for, followed by a set of parentheses. Then we start the loop initialization by defining a new variable using the int keyword, which stands for integer. This specific data type is used for storing numerical values as whole numbers rather than decimals. We then name our loop control variable I, which in the context of C++ coding is a standard convention used for indexing. Conventional or commonly used term in programming for iteration. And right here, we started with the initial value of 0. So, the very first part, initialization, is specifically where the counter starts. This variable now acts as a counter to keep track of our progress. Remember, this is a for loop, repetition and repetition, meaning we will start counting. And the beginning of the counter is this specific initialization part. We have now successfully initialized our counter variable. In this specific case, the counter begins with the statement int I equals 0, which essentially means we are initializing the variable to the value of 0. Effectively, we start our counting process from 0. The second part of the statement represents the condition. This is followed by a semicolon. Of course, it is necessary for us to understand this specific syntax, but the primary purpose here is not to focus on the syntax itself, but rather to grasp the general underlying concept within the C++ programming language. Now, as we previously discussed, in our example here, I is less than 5, which is the condition for the loop. So, the repetition will occur as long as I remains less than 5. The loop will keep repeating over and over again. And the loop will keep going as long as the value of I remains less than 5. As long as that condition stays true, the process repeats itself over and over again. I really hope that this explanation is clear for you. Now, the third part we need to look at is the increment step, which is responsible for updating the value of the variable each time the loop runs. Should we increase the value by 1? Should we increase it by 2? Or do we increase it by 3? So, what exactly is the specific increment value that we have set here in each iteration. In our case, we wrote I++ using the standard C++ programming language. I++ simply means we increase the counter by 1. Here, what happens after each loop? The I++ expression incrementally adds 1 unit to our counter. Then, by closing the parenthesis right here, this represents the fundamental structural syntax of the for loop. It is worth noting that C++ actually has more than one syntax available for loops. The for loop is one of these fundamental programming tools. Let's continue our journey and see together step by step what will happen in an example so the picture becomes much clearer and more intuitive for you. Let's take a moment to observe the execution flow in detail. Watch closely as the computer systematically moves through each part of the loop. Notice how the value of the variable I is updated and changes over time, and how the logical condition is carefully evaluated at every step of the process. In this example, the for loop begins with the initialization statement int I equals 1. As we have already discussed, the keyword int is a shorthand term that stands for integer. In the C++ programming language, this term is a reserved word that tells the compiler to reserve a specific variable name and identify it as I. This variable is officially named I, and its data type is defined as an int, which stands for an integer value, and the instruction further specifies that the system should set its initial starting value to exactly 0. Then the condition we are checking is whether the variable I is currently less than 3. So, as long as this particular variable I holds a value that is less than 3, the loop will continue to execute. So, what exactly is it that we do here? We perform a print operation, we execute the specific command provided, or in this case, simply printing. And in many cases, this happens regardless of the specific program we are using. In reality, there will be hundreds or even thousands of different tasks that we might want to accomplish. But here, simply for the sake of this specific explanation, we have just made it count. The variable I means the count, starting from 0, then it will continue until the repetition ends, as long as I is less than 3. Then we perform I++. First, we need to increase the counter by 1. Then we will print the result and check if the value of I is still less than 3, and then we continue the process. And so it goes on. Let's take a closer look and check what exactly is the current value of the variable I in this specific case. Let's step through the code together. Let's see, at this point the variable I is equal to 0. Look right here, it says int I equals 0 at the start of the program. Now in the program, we consider that we have started the program, or more precisely, we have started the loop process. The condition, notice the condition here. The condition is being checked. Is this condition currently satisfied? In this specific case, the variable I is equal to 0. Okay, looking at the variable now, is the statement true? We have to ask, is I less than 3? Yes, 0 is definitely less than 3. That is quite obvious. So starting from here, let's see what happens next. We are now going to enter the loop process. Let's step through the execution right now. Please take a close look and notice exactly where the pointer is located here. It is currently inside the loop process, specifically during the program's standard print operation as it cycles through the code. Count 0. Now the program has successfully printed cout count cout. This essentially means that the standard output command cut in the C++ language is being used to print the word count followed by a comma and then the word Allah, curly brackets. Then we have the word count placed between quotation marks. So it will print that out exactly as it is, count. It will print it between the quotation marks and then it will show the value of I in this case. Currently I equals 0 and so it will print it out. Okay, what happens next? No. The expression I++ simply means to increment the value by 1. Now let's take a look at what has just happened here in the code. The variable I has now been updated to become 1. And so, let us move on to the next step. Now, let's look at the variable. We said its value is 1. Is that actually correct? Is 1 less than 3? Yes, we can see that 1 is indeed less than 3. Yes, that's right. It is true. So let's check the condition once again, and we find it's still true. Yes, it's absolutely true. So let's continue. Now the program will move down to the next line and perform the print operation. Pay close attention and notice, what exactly will it print? It will proceed to print the word count. Then it will print count, and then it will print the value. This is because the variable currently stored in the computer's memory inside the program itself is equal to 1. Look right here. Yes, the value is 1. It printed this text statement between the quotation marks, and then it set the value of the variable to 1. Now it will search, or more accurately, it will increment. Now the value of I has become 2. Now, let's see if it checks the condition once again. We need to ask, is the current value of the variable I now equal to 2? Is 2 still less than the value of 3? Yes, that is absolutely correct. The condition remains true at this point. That is right. So the program will proceed to execute the count statement, which will print the string count, followed by the current value of I. In this case, it equals 2, and it printed it here. Now it will increment I by 1, I++. If you add 2 and 1 together, what is the total? 3. Now the number has become 3. Now we need to ask, is the value of I less than the limit? Let's see, I equals how much right now? The current value is exactly 3. So is 3 less than 3? That statement is false, and that's incorrect. Let's check the condition again. We can see that 3 is not less than 3. Because of this, we must exit the loop. We will exit the function and exit the loop structure. We are going to exit the loop right now and finish the entire iteration process, and then the program finally comes to an end. I think that with this very simple explanation, the fundamental concept of iteration is really very easy to understand. In this simple example, we have clarified the mechanics of how the iteration process works in a very simplified way. This signifies that we should now finish the trace, meaning we have reached the end of the iteration process. Here is a coding challenge for you to try. Your task is to carefully complete the block of code shown below so that it prints every number from 1 to 10. Take a close look at the snippet and ask yourself, what exactly should go in that missing space? Which of these available options are we supposed to select and put here to ensure the program successfully prints the full sequence from 1 to 10 as intended? Based on everything that we have studied together in the previous minutes, please pause the video right now, take a moment to think carefully for a bit, and then come back here to see the full solution to the problem. All right, I really hope you took a moment to pause the program and thought about the logic for a bit. Now that we are back, let's go through the entire process step by step. What exactly does the requirement say? It says that you need to print every number from 1 all the way to 10. Great. We start with int I equals 1. So the command count, I will print the current value of I, which at this specific moment is 1. In this case, it is already equal to 1. It will print the number 1. But what exactly is the condition we need to set so that it prints all the way up to 10? Should we perhaps set it as I is less than 10? Actually, it will only print up to 9 if we set I less than 10. Just watch closely what will happen here. It will print I equals 1, so it prints 1, then it increments by 1 and becomes 2. Then it goes back down and prints out the number 2 as well. Then it asks, is 2 less than 10? Since that is true, it prints the number and continues until it finally reaches 9. Then the condition fails. For example, is 9 less than 10? Yes, it is. So it will print it out. Then it reaches the number 10. Now, if the variable I becomes 10, we have to ask, is I still less than 10? Well, no, it will not print it. It will exit the loop because the condition is no longer met. So, it won't print the number 10 since the condition is not equal to 10. It is strictly less than 10 only. It specifically said that I must be less than 10, so logically, following that exact logic, the process stops right there. This condition is not met. But notice right here, the variable I is less than or equal to the value of 10, so it will print the numbers up to 9. Then the program checks and says I is also exactly equal to 10. It will definitely say yes to this condition, even when the value is 10, and proceed to print it out. It will print right here at the beginning of this case. We did not put greater than 10, so whatever is greater than 10, it will print in this case. The variable I being less than or equal to 10 is the correct condition. It will print the numbers from 1 to 10. Yes. The condition that I is less than or equal to 10 is the specific logical constraint that ensures the number 10 will be explicitly included in the final output sequence. In the output. This was a quick yet thorough and comprehensive overview of the fundamental for loop concept in C++, and the main goal of this session was to explain the general concept of how loops operate in C++. There will be more in-depth explanations and examples coming up for you very soon. I truly hope that you found this video helpful and informative, and I will be more than happy to answer any specific questions you might have down in the comments section below. I would be absolutely delighted to do so. The direct link to access this simple yet effective educational program will be provided for you in the video description. Thank you so very much for watching once again. I look forward to seeing you in my upcoming videos very soon. Goodbye for now and take care.